and the time is 5:01 p.m. We will begin this meeting, as we do all of our meetings, with a moment of silence, please. Madam President, can you lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me go over the rules of civility and decorum which govern this meeting. Officials shall be recognized by the chair and shall not interrupt the speaker. Public comment shall be addressed to the City Commission as a whole and not to any individual in the dais or in the audience. Displays of anger, rudeness, ridicule, impatience, lack of respect, and personal attacks are strictly prohibited. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, and similar demonstrations should not be permitted. Please govern yourselves accordingly, as offenders may be removed from the meeting. Also, anyone wishing to speak shall complete a comment card for each agenda item the person wishes to address, which shall include the person's full name, address, and the numbered agenda item. If the card is not completed properly, the person will not be recognized. All right. Madam City Administrator, the newest Philadelphia Eagles fan in the audience, are there any additions, deletions, reorganization of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try to get over being distraught by my attire. And
you want to stand up and model? No? Okay, all right.
I don't want to be traumatized. Mayor, Commissioners, my apologies. I did not get this request on the add delete sheet, but we did get a request from the applicant for a continuance. The item is item 9.2, which is a public hearing of a resolution regarding 215 Essex Court. We have a request for a continuance to May 12th. So the board is being asked to consider the continuance when you get to that item. Okay,
very good. Thank you. Madam City Attorney, you will put together real quickly a motion to that effect to be read?
Yes, I will.
Thank you so much. Okay, it is time for a presentation, but I understand that the Congresswoman is running a little bit behind schedule, so we'll proceed with the agenda, and when Congresswoman Sherfless McCormick gets here, then we will come back to item 6.1. We'll now turn to the consent calendar, items 7.1 through 7.4. Commissioners, any comments on any of the consent items? Do we have any cards on consent?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, move approval of the items on consent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item 8.1. Resolution number 35-25, accepting the city's 2024 Affordable Housing Incentives Report, authorizing amending the city's local housing assistance plan to include the report, authorizing transmittal of the amended plan to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, and authorizing implementation of the recommendations in the report.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Kimberly Spence, Assistant Director of Housing and Community Development. So this evening, the item before you is the 2024 Affordable Housing Incentives Report. I will begin my presentation with some background information on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, or the AHAC, and the Local Housing Assistance Plan, which I'll refer to as the LHAP. I'll also go through some highlights of the incentives report and then talk about next steps in terms of submitting the adopted incentives to the state. So the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, or the AHAC, is a requirement of the city to establish this committee to receive funding under the SHIP program. And the SHIP program is funding that we use for several strategies for affordable housing. The AHAC is required to consist of at least 8 members, and those members must represent at least 6 categories that are identified in the Florida statute. The term for the AHAC is 3 years, and last year, August, we did approve by resolution the 10 members that serve on our Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. As far as the membership of the committee, we are required to have an elected official who is Commissioner Warren. We also have a citizen who resides within the city, a citizen who actively serves on the local planning agency, and several citizens who are actively engaged in either advocacy for low-income persons in connection with affordable housing, several nonprofit and for-profit developers of affordable housing, and also a residential home builder. These are the 10 members of our committee. So I'd just like to take a minute to thank all the members that participated, and also to recognize our consultant, Dodie Glass, that worked with the committee to help formulate the recommendations that are being presented to you. And I want to mention that this committee agreed to work several Fridays from 3 to 5 to develop this recommendations. Additional background on the report. The purpose of the AHAC is to complete the Housing Incentive Strategies report to recommend incentives for the creation or preservation of affordable and workforce housing. There are 11 incentives that are required to be considered. 2 of those 11 incentives are required to be implemented, and those are expedited permitting and an ongoing process for the review of local policies or ordinances that may increase the cost of housing. The report provides a review of the current implementation of the 11 incentives and also provides new recommendations for the city to consider. This is a report that is due annually to the state, so the committee will continue to meet during this year in order to review the implementation of the recommendations and also to make any necessary amendments to the incentives report that will be due by the end of this calendar year. How does this tie in with the actual funding that we receive? So the city is also required to prepare a local housing assistance plan, or the LHAP. In that plan, it describes the housing strategies that will be used to expend the SHIP funds. The LHAP covers 3 funding years. Our most recent LHAP was for fiscal year 24 through 2027, and we are required to amend that plan in order to incorporate the recommendations of the AHAC that are adopted today. Just to give you an idea of the funding that we receive from the state, these are funding allocations for the previous fiscal years, as well as the upcoming fiscal year. We have an estimate. You can see over the last 4 years, we've received on average about $1.1 million in SHIP funding. And again, we use this funding for construction of affordable housing. Some of our recent projects have involved our partners in the community, such as Habitat for Humanity or Neighborhood Renaissance, to build single-family homes for eligible low-income home buyers. So now I'm going to turn to the Housing Incentive Strategies report itself. As I mentioned, there are 12 incentive strategies that were voted on by the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. They finalized this report at the end of last year. They approved all the recommendations, and staff does recommend that we adopt the recommendations as is. These incentives are going to be included in the LHAP that's submitted to the state. The first incentive is expedited permitting, which, as the name suggests, it requires us to expedite permits for any affordable housing and workforce housing projects to a greater degree than other projects. So because the city already has this incentive in place and procedures to ensure that permits are expedited for these projects, the AHAC recommended that the city continue to expedite the review of building permits and any permits required for affordable housing. Part of the discussion around this incentive was that the city provides some training to some of its customers that utilize the EPL application permitting system. This is a relatively new system for the city, and one of the things we've heard from especially the smaller developers is issues with navigating, and they require some training on using that system. Incentive 2 is for the waiver or a reduction of fees related to the development of affordable housing. Again, we already have this incentive in place. The city waives or reduces certain fees such as the expedited permitting fee, the engineering administration fee, water and wastewater capacity fee, several other fees as well. And so the AHAC recommended that the city continue to implement the current incentives. Part of the discussion around this incentive was just a general conversation of the need for additional funding for affordable housing. As you know, the city receives both federal and state funding, the SHIP funding for affordable housing, and we also have a local housing trust fund. The committee recommended that we investigate some additional permanent sources of funding to go into the Housing Trust Fund, as these unrestricted dollars are very important for some of the projects that are coming into the city that have a gap. The AHAC also recommended that we look at other potential sources of funding that could assist mixed income housing, which is also a goal of the city. And they recommend that we consider not only the waiver or reduction of some of these fees, but also the deferment of some fees as another option to facilitate the creation of more affordable housing. This is one of 4 tasks that the AHAC recommends that we identify as a priority task in the coming year. I want you to keep in mind that while they've identified priorities, we also are taking into consideration other projects that are going on in the city, staff capacity, and also the ability of other departments to work with housing and community development to move forward with some of these recommendations. Incentive 3 is to increase density for affordable housing. This is another area where the city already has an incentive to increase height and density for affordable housing and workforce housing projects. We also recently, last year, passed the affordable workforce housing overlay, which allows for increased density up to double the density in certain districts. So again, the AHAC recommended that we continue the incentives, but also that we monitor the efforts of the affordable workforce housing overlay, and that we monitor the efforts of the housing incentives in the current housing master plan, considering that that plan is also being updated as we speak. Incentive 4 is the reservation of infrastructure capacity for very low income and low income persons. Again, this is an incentive that we have in place where we reduce water and wastewater capacity fees. The AHAC recommends that we continue with this incentives and that we ensure that there's adequate funding or identify some additional funding and permanent funding for infrastructure capacity charges. Incentive 5 is the allowance of affordable accessory residential units in certain residential zoning districts. This incentive did get a lot of conversation and discussion around this topic. The AHAC recommends that we continue implementing the current incentives because the city does allow accessory dwelling units in certain single-family districts or historic areas. They also recommend that we explore ADUs for opportunities to increase income potential for some homeowners or to keep special needs populations or elderly persons housed in the community. Again, this is another priority task that the AHAC selected for this year. Incentive 6 is the reduction of parking and setback requirements, another incentive that the city already has. So the AHAC recommends that we continue implementing the incentive. Incentive 7 is flexible lot configurations. Again, our current land development regulations do allow for some flexibility. The AHAC recommends that the city continue implementing the current incentives and that we pursue opportunities for attached single-family designs such as townhomes to be expanded in single-family districts of the city. And again, this is the 3rd priority task to increase the provision of affordable housing options. Incentive 8 is the modification of street requirements for affordable housing. We also have an incentive that addresses this in our Housing Assistance Incentives Program, so the AHAC recommends that the city continue with the current process. Incentive 9 is establishing a process for the review of new policies that can increase housing costs. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of the required incentives that we have to adopt. We do have a process in place whereby the HCD director does review policies, is involved in the creation of policies as well regarding of housing. And so this process already exists, and the AHAC recommends that we continue with implementing the process. Incentive 10 is to prepare an inventory of locally owned public land. This is also required by Florida statute, so this is something that we seek approval for every 3 years. We come to commission with an item to update our list of public lands that are owned by the city and the CRA. We post this information on the HCD webpage. So the AHAC recommends that we continue with the incentive and current procedures. Almost there. Incentive 11 is the development near transportation hubs and supporting development near major employment centers. Again, this is basically built into our existing land development regulations and into some of the more recent workforce and affordable housing provisions to allow some flexibility around alternative transportation options. And finally, incentive 12, this is the incentive that the AHAC chose to add to the 11 required areas. And this is the creation of a one-stop affordable workforce housing resource. This also came from feedback from developers small developers, some larger developers that want to work and do business with the city of West Palm Beach. Sometimes there is difficulty or challenges with identifying who to talk to about developing affordable housing in the city. They have to come to HCD, Development Services, different departments to get that information. So the goal here is to create a one-stop shop with all the information and the resources that a developer would need. The recommendations are to expand the current efforts to create that resource and referral guide that will include the incentives that we're talking about, as well as some financial resources that the city may provide or other possible resources through the county or other sources, dedicating staff for the facilitation of workforce and affordable development projects, and this is also the priority task for the committee. As far as next steps, as you can see, the AHAC has already approved the report. The actual recommendations have been submitted to the state and to this commission by the December 31st deadline. Hopefully this will be adopted tonight, March 17th, and we will submit the revised LHAP with the adopted incentives to the state by the end of the month, and then we'll begin having our ongoing meetings with the AHAC the rest of this year. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take those.
Thank you for that report. I find it interesting that this requirement is contained in something called the William E. Sadowski Affordable Housing Act. Do you have any idea of where we are with the Sadowski Trust Fund and the release of those monies to the cities?
Yes, in recent years, there has been legislation to ensure that those funds will come to the city and that they are not eliminated, which used to happen in the past. So as you can see on the slide on the where I showed the funding that has been received from the city, in the last 4 years and this year, we did receive a significant amount of funding, $1 million. If I had looked at a year prior to the year here, you probably would have seen zero because we didn't receive any that year. So right now, I know that the Sadowski Coalition is meeting. Obviously, the legislature is meeting to commit the funding to the program.
And they're doing that on a year-by-year basis?
Annually, we receive that funding. It's the state fiscal year begins July 1st. Usually, we receive our first round of funding maybe a few months after that.
Now, do we know if the monies that we received in the previous years is the full amount that we were supposed to receive?
Yes,
All
it
right,
is,
okay. Thank you for that update.
of course.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. First, my comment is about the one-stop shop. I think that's great. I've been hearing some comments lately, just that might be needed in other areas as well, just that we are growing to be increasingly complex, and we have a lot of different programs at our city, and I think that this would be great because I know workforce housing and affordable housing is a top priority for us, and so making it very easy for folks to come and see what we have to offer is a great idea. I had a question about the ADUs. the accessory dwelling units. I'm glad to see that that's a required element already by the state, but I was just curious, are we doing any more research about where ADUs might be appropriate in the city?
Yes, as part of the meetings with the committee, we did have staff from Development Services as part of the presentation to educate the committee on the history here in the city of some of these incentives. Even though they have recommended this, the conversation will be around doing just that, getting feedback from the community if we get direction from the board to move forward in looking at ADUs. I do also understand that the state is considering legalizing ADUs in all single-family districts, so that's something that we will have to follow to see how that will implement the city.
I know when I first moved here as a young professional, that was where I lived, and it, afforded me a great opportunity to put roots down here. Thank you.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the staff for showing up the way that you have in addressing these issues. It's when I was able to observe you in action and how you collaborated and the way that you all came together, it was wonderful to hear the things that staff was able to recommend and bring forward. And I'd like to thank all of the members of the community that participated in the committee. It was dynamic and diverse, and they offered so much insight on recommendations and their experience that they brought and their time that they dedicated to the process in those late Friday meetings and dealing with the traffic as we left. But they did not have to do that, but they did volunteer to be a part of the process and to make these recommendations that we've been able to come together and hear presented today. So that was something that was a voice of many that came together to provide this leadership. I really encourage my colleagues here to really take this into strong consideration because what West Palm Beach, as much as people don't want to, they want affordable housing and homeless issues addressed, but they don't really understand a lot of the dynamics that it takes in order to make these things happen, and the incentives that are necessary, and all of the concessions that need to go into place for us to be able to be the city that we are with the amount of units in place that we're seeing being constructed. That all happens and is very deliberate and intentional, and I think that we need to recognize that the conversations that we're having are conversations that are influencing other communities in the way that they address workforce and affordable housing, and the way that developers present to us when they're talking about projects, because we've been consistent and I think very thoughtful in using the perpetuity as being something that we know is important, because these issues aren't going to go away within the next 20 years. Hopefully. So let me not speak definitively as though it will not. Hopefully it will, but in the event that it isn't, being prepared for this issue is extremely important, and what I believe true leadership is about. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your support. And we couldn't do what we do in HCD without the support of everybody here today. So.
And I would be remiss if I didn't publicly thank all the members of the committee for all the hard work they put in and help us with this report. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much. First, I have a comment, and then I have a question. But my comment is, when you talked about building the workforce housing that is close to transportation, I think one of the things I look at in the city now is that most of our transportation options are located downtown, which also happens to be the most expensive land, probably in the whole county. And so one of the things that we are talking about at the TPA, that FDOT has a feasibility study on the possibility of light rail that could be built from downtown West Palm going down Okeechobee to Wellington. And I think looking towards that as a long-term solution, that we have these strip malls that have been there from the 80s that could possibly be turned into more affordable housing if there was more transportation located close by. So that's more of just a comment, because obviously it would be very beneficial to people that were looking for workforce housing to also be able to have sometimes paying for a car is the same cost as paying for housing. So if they could have other options for transit, that would be fantastic. But my question was going to be also about the ADUs. I think that in many cities, that is one of the strategies that really mitigates the shortage of affordable housing. But I think that also with there's just so many short-term users now, and looking at, especially in Palm Beach County, we have a lot of visitors that would love to have, to be staying in a beautiful backyard rather than adding that to the affordable housing. When they become short-term rentals, I guess that kind of it becomes an issue. So I'm just wondering if on the state level, if you've heard of any opportunities for, if we were going to implement more ADUs, is there something that we can put in place that says they can't be used as short-term rentals?
What I have seen at the state level in a recent House bill is, as I mentioned, to legalize ADUs in all single-family districts. That allows for long-term rental. I'm not sure specifically if there's other legislation or if part of that addresses the short-term rental. But
when it comes back to us, if there was additional research, I'd love to hear about it.
yes, we will do that. As I mentioned, Development Services and HCD staff will have to follow the bills that are going through legislation right now. There are others as well that will impact the Live Local Act, for example, that we're following to see what the outcome of that is.
All right, any other questions, comments on this item? Do we have any cards on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of resolution number 35-25.
Second.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now turn to item 9.1, public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 5121-24, a city-initiated request for a zoning map amendment to rezone certain properties from Broadway Mixed-Use District Building Type 1 and Broadway Mixed-Use District Building Type 2 to Broadway Mixed-Use District, BMUD. And public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 5122-24, a city-initiated request for a text amendment to the zoning and land development regulations, Chapter 94, Article 1, Section 94-4, to designate the new Broadway mixed-use district zoning categories, and amending Article 7, Sections 94-209, 94-219, 94-220, and 94-221 to establish new development standards and regulations for the Broadway mixed-use district.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Ana Maria Aponte, Development Services Assistant Director. As it was mentioned, this is a second reading of the ordinance that intends to rebrand or advance the movement on North Broadway, for a redevelopment. So as a little bit of background, we presented the entire regulation, the first reading, and a few days before the first reading was presented to the commissioner, the city was approached by GL Homes with a proposal for the construction of single-family houses on the area east of Broadway between 40 and 45th Street, from Fralger to Broadway. This is really not affecting Broadway, except they were proposing some single families really close to the Broadway frontage, and they were proposing to have along Broadway just an access pad that they need for their operation of the single families and a wall as a buffer to the single families. So when staff looked at this proposal, we were concerned with the impact of this in the proposed redevelopment and division that is being created for Broadway. So we worked with GL Homes, and they were very kind and sat with us, and we discussed different options. And we basically proposed some idea of having a frontage on Broadway that allows them to have what we consider a better buffer for the single family, but it still have an active use and residential uses or commercial if they decide along Broadway. So they took our ideas and went to the drawing table and basically came back to us saying that they were amenable to that. They replaced 5 single-family homes that were closer to Broadway and proposed a townhouse product to be developed along Broadway. This is fully in compliance with the vision of the BMOD regulations that have been drafted. And what we did from first reading to second reading was basically to review the proposed regulations and be sure that the product that they were proposing was fitting the regulation. So we have to do small tweaks on the regulation to give GL Homes a comfort level and be sure that this product could be developed, which we think is a win-win for them and for the city. So the first change that we did is the single-family houses were not, as a use, were not permitted in the BMOD. So we adjusted the regulation to allow that, but not within 75 feet from the Broadway frontage. So these will allow basically the construction of single-family, but provide a more intense development type along Broadway. Have not submitted the product or their project. These are just visuals of how these could fit under the BMOD regulations. So they will have to come back afterwards and submit the project to do it, if they decide to do it. But it's basically townhouses along Broadway and have rear-loaded garages with the access way that they needed on the back to be able to function for the garbage collections and provide the access to the parking garages for the townhouses. It also includes a buffer that is a requirement of the BMOD and the wall separating the more intense use along Broadway from the single family. So in addition to that we have included in your packet, we have to do some additional changes that were not included in the packet that you have through the system. So we have to adjust the proposed height, the maximum height for the 3-story building. And these were in discussions with the GL Home again. We had a maximum height of 40 feet. And in discussions with them, they wanted to probably do a 3-story product, and they needed a little higher maximum to allow those 3 stories. So we increased it from 40 feet to 45 feet in maximum height. This is the base zoning, so it will be allowed for any product along Broadway. We don't think it has a negative impact on the residential neighborhood and could provide a little bit more flexibility. We also added some additional language to recognize the possibility of new alleys being created. We have some alleys on the east side of Broadway that are south of 36. GL Homes product is proposing new alleys. We don't think it's any detriment for Broadway. It could provide smaller buildings, commercial, residential, and function the same way. So we just adjusted the language a little bit to recognize that in addition to the existing ones, the regulation applies to new alleys when those are created. And this is the table that was adjusted, so it's just clarifying that it's existing or new ones. We also did other minor changes on the ordinance. This one is actually not related to BMOD, but it's more a house cleaning matter. This is a table that is included at the beginning of the zoning and land development regulations that just list all the districts that are in the code. So we were missing some of the districts actually outside BMOD. So we just cleaned that up and included that. And we added a couple of other cleanup items. One definition for large-scale development that was included on the original version are remaining there, but it doesn't belong in there because it was removed that. We call it a different way. And we added some provisions for decorative architectural elements that were also in response to the BMOD, the GL Home proposal, to just allow some decorative elements. This applies to anyone along BMOD and doesn't have any negative impacts. We think it's beneficial for the district. That is basically the extent of the changes. This is a summary, a city-initiated request for the rezoning and the amendments to the LDRs directed to promote the redevelopment of the Broadway corridor as an urban, pedestrian-friendly corridor with mixed uses and workforce housing. So as the mayor said at the beginning, there's 2 ordinances. One is the rezoning, and the second one is a text amendment to the zoning and land development regulations. The rezoning is from BMOD 1 and 2 to just one single district, that is BMOD. And then the zoning and land development regulations includes 4 different sections that we are amending, with the bulk of the regulations being in section 94-219 and 94-220. Mailers were sent and notified, and ad was published also for all these hearings. All the amendments are in compliance, and the amendments and the rezoning are in compliance with the standards in section 9432A as required by the code, and staff is recommending approval for those. That concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Questions? President Ward?
I know this isn't final, but can you go back to your slide showing the overall town, not the visuals of the townhomes, but the map?
This one? This one?
Yes, that one, I think, yes. So I notice, what are they offering? I see that it's just those three, but technically they could go all the way down to 40th. Are they proposing something different at the corner of 40th right there?
Here?
Yes.
I think in here, their proposal was for a small surface parking lot.
Okay.
But we were focused on being sure that the townhouse product was fitting in there.
But that parking lot is allowed, right, with current provisions, or no?
As a standalone, probably not. Oh, okay, so they will have to set back. Natalie?
There's a 30-foot
Could
setback.
you just state your
from
name
Broadway.
for the record, please?
Oh,
State your name for
my
the
name is
record.
Natalie Lipsy with Dover Cole & Partners.
Okay.
There's a 30-foot setback from Broadway for any open parking lots that must then have a wall or garden space buffer between the street and the area. This will allow for future liners to be put in place within that 30-foot buffer.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I appreciate the update today, and I know that at the first reading that we talked a lot about the community outreach and the community input that took place, and I'm grateful for that. I just wanted to bring up two items that we talked about last time. One was coincidentally about parking and just making sure that, we're continually looking at the businesses that are going to be coming in here and the uses so that we don't have similar issues in the north end that we have in the south end with parking along South Dixie and here on Broadway because of businesses that are allowed in that don't have enough parking.
Yes, I mean, like the regulation for new businesses have parking requirements, and the existing businesses, if you have a building that exists and you are just converting, let's say, from a dentist to a restaurant, if you are not adding square footage, additional parking will not be required. And that's a requirement, a regulation that applies to the entire city. We think these incentivize the commercial use. I understand the concern about parking. So probably some other things will have to be worked out on Broadway. Broadway, different than South Dixie, it doesn't have on-street parking along Broadway because it's restricted. So we have discussed in some areas the ideas of different ideas, or like small parking lots, or even when the streets are closed, those could be converted into small parking and different options of how to accommodate it. But I mean, that's a reality we'll have to face, see what we do once we are there. I mean, at this point, we're just trying to attract and redevelop the district, but.
Great. Well, now I appreciate that we're being creative and thoughtful about some concerns that may come. And then the other item was just reviewing the uses that are allowed in the area. I know we talked about that at the first reading, and you were going to review that, just making sure that because this is so close to residential, that we're not allowing uses that would have sound issues.
I mean, we have look at that. It's basically a commercial corridor. So there are, like, for example, restaurants are allowed, but if they have outdoor spaces that will create noise, that is an enforcement of the noise ordinance, and that is a different regulation. It's not in the use table. But definitely it's a corridor that allowed commercial uses. It doesn't allow industrial heavy uses or any of that sort. But in terms of commercial uses, if you have a restaurant or something like that, it will be permitted. If they start doing music outside or something, that will be more the noise ordinance that will kick in.
Well, thank you. I know we want to incentivize development in this area, and that it's a balance that we want to strike with our neighborhoods as well. Thank you so much for all your work on this.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, commissioners? If not, we have one card. Michael Zeff.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Michael Zeff. I'm President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches, and I would just like to reiterate our support for this project before you this evening. We believe this will bring significant economic development to the North End. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no other comments, I will entertain some motions.
I move approval of ordinance number 5121-24, rezoning certain properties from Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 1 and Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 2 to Broadway Mixed Use District B-MUD. This motion is based upon the factual testimony presented, the staff report, the recommendation of the planning board, the finding that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and consideration of the factors listed in section 94-32 of the zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 5121-24, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, amending the zoning map of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida by rezoning the properties generally located between 59th Street and 25th Street to the east and west and facing Florida State Road A1A, and consisting of approximately 43.9 acres from Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 1 and Broadway Mixed Use District Building Type 2 to Broadway Mixed Use District, declaring this zoning map amendment to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, providing a conflicts clause and a severability clause, providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. President Ward?
I move to approve ordinance number 5122-24, approving text amendments to the zoning and land development regulations, Chapter 94, establishing new zoning categories and development standards and regulations for the Broadway Mixed-Use District. This motion is based upon the factual testimony presented, the staff report, the recommendations of the planning board, the finding that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and consideration of the factors listed in section 94-32 of the zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 5122-24, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, at Chapter 94, Zoning and Land Development Regulations, to amend regulations applicable to the Broadway Mixed Use District as follows. Amending Article 1, Section 94-4, zoning districts to redefine the Broadway Mixed Use District categories. Amending and restating Article 7, Section 94-209, mixed-use districts to add BMUD definitions and regulations. Amending and restating Section 94-219, Broadway mixed-use district to establish new development standards for BMUD. Amending and restating Section 94-220 to create the Broadway mixed-use district, expanded development standards, and deleting Section 94-221, BMUD Building Type 2 regulations, declaring this amendment to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, providing a conflicts clause, a codification clause, and a severability clause, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now, I see that Congresswoman Sharfless McCormick has entered the room, and so out of respect for her time, we will now return to item 6.1, a check presentation to the City of West Palm Beach by the Congresswoman. And Congresswoman, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm so happy to be here in West Palm Beach, seeing all your faces. It's a real pleasure to be here with good news. There's been so much bad news, but this is a good news moment. I want to say a special thank you to Mayor James for allowing me to be here today, Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Lambert, Commissioner Peduzzi, and Commissioner Shalonda Warren. Thank you so much. And Christine Fox, how are you today? We're here today to talk about this great initiative that we were able to do. This is an exciting day, as I mentioned. Today I'm here to present a check for $1 million. Do we have the check? Woo! And so, This check is $1 million to deliver to West Palm Beach. It will be used for developing an affordable rental housing right here in Coleman Park. This 1.5-acre site will accommodate up to 18 supportive housing units for families that are at risk of being homeless or currently working to get back on their feet. It will also help low-income households who are being priced out of South Florida's housing market. This is more than just a housing unit. It is a beacon of hope and to let everyone know that they have the ability to rebuild, to grow, and to thrive in West Palm Beach. And so with that, I would like to present this check, and I want to thank everybody who worked so diligently, especially the staff and all of the commissioners and the mayor who really worked with us to make sure that we're meeting the housing needs of this city. And we're almost there. We're not there yet, but we're doing everything to get there. So thank you so much for your partnership, and thank you so much for us being able to present and actually help more West Palm Beach residents have housing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess I'll just come on down and receive the check. Yeah. Congresswoman, before you leave, let me just publicly thank you for all of the work that you do in Washington, and certainly you're a tremendous friend of the city, and we truly thank you and appreciate you, and keep up the good fight. All right, we now turn to item 9.2, which I understand is going to be continued. Do we have a motion? Well, I will mention that after, yeah. Hold on, I haven't called you yet, sir. Yeah, thank you.
I move to continue consideration of Resolution 65-25 to the commission meeting scheduled to begin on May 12th, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the City of West Palm Beach Commission Chambers located at 401 Clematis Street, West Palm Beach, Florida.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Since there's no opposition, motion carries unanimously. So what we've done, ladies and gentlemen, the applicant has asked that this item be continued until May 12th. And so we just passed a motion to accept that. I know we have a number of cards of people who wanted to speak on that item, but since that item is not under consideration for today, you'll have to return on May 12th. All right? Yes.
Just clarification, if any of the residents who wanted to speak, could they stay and speak at public comment at the end of the meeting?
Well, yeah, they can always speak at public comment if they wanted to. We'll need to refill the card.
We wanted to address the motion.
You wanted to address the motion to continue? Okay, if you want to, okay, you can come and address the motion, even though it's already passed, but you're certainly welcome. All right, who?
Thank you.
Hold on, we'll say your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Bob Morrell,
Okay,
and I reside on Essex Court. I've resided there with my wife for the last 33 years, and our property is immediately to the south of the petitioner's properties. In considering the petitioner's request for the postponement, as the Commission may have noticed, there are several residents here of both Essex Lane and Essex Court who would like to state their position regarding the petitioner's petition. The concern we have is if the 60-day postponement is granted by the Commission, many of us may be out of town for the summer, and we will not have an opportunity then to state our position regarding the petitioner's petition. If the Commission is inclined to grant the postponement, which it obviously is, we would request that you consider a 30-day postponement as opposed to a 60-day postponement. It is likely that if there is an April meeting of the commission and this is considered then, most, if not all of us, will still be in town and we'll be able to personally present our position as opposed to today when we won't have that opportunity. So we would appreciate consideration of that.
Okay, thank you. You finished?
I am.
All right, so what we said is if you wanted to memorialize your comments, we do have public comment at the end of this meeting, and so you can articulate your concerns, objections during that period of time, and it could be memorialized, and we can make sure the clerk keeps record of that, so at the time that there is a discussion of this matter, those comments can be certainly included as part of the record.
Right. We would think it'd be more effective if we were able
okay,
to
this is not a back and forth conversation. So that is your right at this point, is to wait until public comment, articulate your concerns. We've already passed a motion to continue it in accordance with the motion. So that's where we are.
Could I ask
All
the
right?
commission to reconsider the motion?
No, because you're not on this body. So that's where we are. But thank you. So if you want to stay into a public comment, you can certainly articulate your concerns at that time. All right? Thank you. Okay, so we'll now want to hold on to those. And so if you do want to speak at the public comment, you'll need to either amend these cards or fill out a new card so we'll know to call on you at that time. All right? Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to the quasi-judicial portion of the meeting. And so, commissioners, I will need you to make your disclosures. And who looks like they're ready? Commissioner Lambert, you look like you're ready.
Not ready.
No, you're not ready. Okay. President Ward is ready.
As to matter 10.1, I have had ex parte communications with the applicant representatives, and community members at multiple meetings and received emails related to this item. So I have received written communications in the form of emails. I have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. As to item 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications, have not received written communications, have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Mayor. As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communication with the applicant's representative. I have not received written communications, not conducted an investigation, not made a site visit, not received expert opinions. As to item 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications, not conducted an investigation, not made a site visit, and not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. Commissioner Lambert, are you ready?
Yes. As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. As to 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox?
As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communications with the applicant. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. As to item 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. Commissioner Peduzzi?
Thank you. As to item 10.1, I have had ex parte communications with a representative of the applicant. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, nor have I received any expert opinions. As to matter 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, nor have I received any expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made a part of the record.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, can you swear in all witnesses, please?
Would everyone wishing to speak on items 10.1 and 10.2 please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Item 10.1, public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 5125-25 regarding a rezoning to change the zoning designation of approximately 1.45 acres located at 4906 North Flagler Drive from multifamily high-density residential to residential plan development, and resolution number 51-25 discussion regarding the development regulations and conditions for the Apogee residential plan development and granting waivers of the zoning and land development regulations. All right, Mr. Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Brian Seymour with the Gunster Law Firm on behalf of the applicant. With us tonight, Nicholas Perez, Andrew Chesnick, and Rick Fortenberry from the Related Group, Fidel Zavik, the architect, Greg Wilfong, and Chris Hagan from Kimley Horn, and of course, who you'll hear from momentarily, maybe a little more than momentarily, John Roach, who is an AICP certified planner with my law firm. This is a project of the Related Group, which, as you know, is a developer of a variety of projects from luxury condominiums to affordable projects. They bring a distinctive brand of culture, design, and lifestyle-infused properties that help to revitalize urban neighborhoods. One of their first recent projects was Icon Marina Village, which has already added value to the north end of West Palm Beach. They are also in the process now, after your approval, of the Ritz-Carlton residences on North Flagler Drive. They are a committed partner to the city, not just in their development, but in their community activities and everything that they've done. And I hope what you'll see today shows that just a little bit more, because what you're going to see is some concessions that have been made and work with your staff and with the neighborhood for what we're going to bring you tonight. The site we're talking about is located on the east of North Flagler Drive, between 48th and 49th Street. It's 1.45 acres, which a little over a quarter is submerged lands. Currently, it's occupied by a single-family residence with 2 accessory dwelling units, but it is MF future land use and an MF 32 residential zoning designation. That is the highest density allowed in the city of West Palm Beach. That is also true of the vast majority of the properties that surround it. So while they are currently developed in one way, there is an intent for the future of the east side of Flagler, as identified in your zoning map, that the density would be on that side. The RPD that you see, not the PORD, the RPD is Alba. And so that is currently under construction. And what we hope to show you tonight, and what we are going to show you tonight, is that the vision of that east side of Flagler is coming to fruition with Apogee. So what we're proposing is to establish an RPD ourselves, similar to what Alba did, very similar to what Alba did, to provide for the efficient use of the property and construct a development consistent with the allowable density pursuant to the zoning and land development regulations. There are incentives offered by PDs. They include, but are not limited to, something we all know well, relaxing of height setbacks and area requirements. And those are some of the things we're going to talk to you about tonight. So to do that, we're going to rezone to RPD from the MF 32, just as Alba did, that will provide for the construction of a very high-end multifamily condominium. Now, when this was first presented to the planning board back in December of 2023, so it's been a little while, we took a lot of time to do some work. We were looking at 46 units, a 25-story tower that was a little over 287 feet in height, with a 2-level parking structure of 100 spaces, which was only 3 over the required number of spaces, amenities on the rooftop and parking garage, and 7 waivers. That was all past tense, and there's a reason for that, because what you're going to see tonight is a little bit different, because during that December 2023 meeting, staff raised concerns about the height, particularly in relating to the setback ratios and looking at Alba and the height that was approved for Alba. So we took a little bit of time with that. The planning board ultimately, at that point, voted not to recommend approval to you, and directed us to go sit down with staff and work with staff and the neighbors, talk about folks. And we know we can never get everything that everybody wants, but we did do a lot of work to accommodate things. The planning board did recognize at that time, and why they recommend approval tonight, that the concept and the density made sense, but they agreed that we should go back a little bit on this site, which is a very narrow site, and look at that height, those setbacks, and see what we can do. So we spent several months working with staff on what they could support and working with the neighborhood, and particularly Northwood Harbor, on what we could do to help some of the concerns that they had. We do have a private agreement with them. We've sent them a letter that confirms that. That's not your concern, but it is something that we did have that we provided to them. I do know their vice president, I think she's still the vice president, is here. Hopefully she'll say nice things about me. You never know. I've known her a very long time. So following the recommendations of staff and the direction of the planning board, we've downsized the project. And so instead of 46 units, we're now down to 39. We have a 21-story, approximately 235-foot high tower with 99 parking spaces, now 17 more than were required. And we were able to eliminate one of the waivers, and the height setback waiver was also substantially reduced. As we reduced the height and increased the setback, obviously that was reduced quite a bit. So what we're going to show you tonight is this. The planning board recommending approval of an over 15% reduction in the number of units, a 16% reduction in the number of stories, an 18% reduction in overall height, and a more than 15% reduction in number of required spaces, leading to that 14 space surplus. As I mentioned, we also have an agreement with our neighbors, and we continue to work with them. So all that's the summary, believe it or not. The detail, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. I'm going to turn this over to John Roach, who, as I mentioned, is an AICP certified planner who's been working on this project since inception, to walk you through some of the details. And then we do have our team here to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Mr. Roach?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, John Roach, planner with the Gunster Law Firm. The first detail that I'm going to discuss is at the ground plane. The site plan you see here with the rendering and landscaping, emphasis on the landscaping. You can see along the north and the south, we have our landscape buffers substantially screening the proposed parking garage as well as the tower. But we put a lot of emphasis, and I'll talk about this throughout the details over the coming slides. We put a lot of emphasis on the North Flagler Drive streetscape, buffering, and layering of landscaping, as that is the area to us the most important, as that fronts onto the Northwood Harbor historic single-family neighborhood district across the street. So again, that focus is on Flagler Drive, as opposed to where the zoning code typically with these types of buildings and the height to setback ratio puts the emphasis to the sides and the rear. Given the context and the single family, which is going to occur and remain on the other side of the street, that's where we put that emphasis. Brian talked about the elimination of a waiver that was in particular with regards to the south setback. There's a 20-foot setback requirement for RPDs, regardless of anything that you put in there. We had previously requested a waiver from that at the direction of the planning board and staff. We did modify that and were able to eliminate that waiver. So I want to put a little bit of emphasis here on the next couple slides about this Flagler Drive. The zoning code only requires a 25-foot setback within the RPD zoning with an MF32 underlying zoning. That's regardless of the height of the building. So 25 feet, whether you're a 40-foot tall building, whether you're a 100-foot tall building, the zoning code only requires 25 feet. Normally, the area of greatest impact is along your side and rear property lines, because that's where you have your neighbors who are immediately adjacent to you. That's not necessarily the case here. While we do have adjacent properties to our north and south, those are multifamily. That's where you're going to see the density. That's where you're going to see other taller buildings. So we, again, put that emphasis on our Flagler Drive frontage, where we're abutting the single-family neighborhood. We decided, as part of this emphasis and providing for the multiple layers of landscaping against that garage, we decided to increase that front setback for the 40-foot tall parking garage that you see here, which occupies approximately half of the property. So everything here within this linear portion of the building is the two-story parking garage. It's approximately 40 foot tall, so it complies with that 40-foot height limit and doesn't trigger the additional setback needed for additional height. But in addition to complying with that height, we extended our front setback even further, an additional 15 feet. So instead of 25-foot required front setback, we are providing for a 40-foot front setback. That's for levels 1 and 2, which consists of the parking garage, as well as the amenity deck above. The tallest portion of the building, which is the tower, and that's where Brian was referring to the 237-foot, the height that's proposed, is actually 325 feet back from Flagler Drive. So we're 300 feet more than what the zoning code requires. Again, irregardless of height, we're more than what the zoning code requires for this portion of the building. So that's where we put that emphasis on moving the height away from Flagler Drive, adjacent to the Intracoastal Waterway, the rear property line, where it's less likely to impact those adjacent properties. That portion of the building, the tower portion of the building that I was referring to, that is 325 feet away, is actually only 18% of the property, or of the upland area of the property. So it's a substantially smaller portion as opposed to everything else that consists of the parking garage and the amenity deck. This here just quickly shows a circulation pattern to provide for the most efficient, as well as some buffering between the garage and the north and south property lines. We split our driveway into two access points. They are one way, so you enter the property at the south side and then loop around through the main lobby, or in front of the main lobby, extending around the north side of the building, and then you proceed to the egress point onto Flagler. So we took what would normally be a much wider access point, split it into two one-ways, providing for that more efficient design, as well as accounting for some of that setback and buffering between those adjacent properties. So what you have here is a comparison between the planning board version that was presented in December of 2023 versus the current proposal, and how that has changed. The architecture has pretty much remained the exact same. We did eliminate the units that Brian was referring to, as well as the height. So what you see on the left is the original proposal. That was the 287 feet in height. And then the current proposal is on the right, which is just over 235 feet in height. And again, this is just the tower portion of the project, which is adjacent to the intercoastal. You can see the amenity and the garage levels extending off to the left side of each image. Those are approximately 40 feet in height, and comply with that height requirement without the need for the additional setback. So as mentioned in the previous slides, that 52-foot reduction in height is over 18% of the original building design that has been removed from the scope of the project. The tower concept is consistent with other redevelopments that the city has approved along North Flagler Drive, including Alba, that Brian had mentioned. Here you can see the design from the southwest, where you see a significant setback of that tower from Flagler Drive, as well as the increased landscaping along the front, and actually have a better rendering of that front portion here in just a second. In the background, you can see the Placido Mar, as well as the Palm Beach House, which are existing developments on the east side of Flagler Drive. Here you see the project from north to south, again along Flagler. The shadowing that you see here is the Alba that Brian was referring to, which is the exact same height as what we are proposing before you this evening. And then this is the better rendering of the entry and the layered landscaping that we are proposing along Flagler, with the multi-purpose pathway, seating, public art, as well as the layered landscaping of shade trees, hedges, and so forth. And then this one is, in particular, this driveway is the ingress at the south side of the property. So consistent with the purpose of the planned development, we're requesting 6 waivers. As Brian indicated, this is a reduction from 7. Each of these will offer an incentive allowing for redevelopment of the unique narrow property with high-end multifamily, and allow it to be developed at the density that the zoning code anticipates. This will also make for the most efficient use of that small piece of land. The first waiver is with regards to the minimum acreage requirements. There's two provisions of your code. They contradict each other. One states that you have to have 10 acres for an RPD, another states that you have to have 2. Regardless, our property is 1.45, so we are requesting a waiver from that. The City Commission, upon a finding by the Planning Board and the City Commission that the benefits of the plan development can be granted or can be realized within the smaller land area, that waiver is allowable. This has been granted a number of times, as many of the properties that get developed within the city now are redevelopment within the eastern core of the city. Buildings with an MF32, sorry, not sure why the menu popped up there. Buildings within the MF32 underlying zoning, as you know, are not to exceed 40 feet unless that additional setback is provided. And I talked about how that emphasis is on the side and the rear. It is not, the additional setback is not required on the front of the property. So we are requesting a waiver in order to achieve the height and the density that is anticipated, or excuse me, achieve the density that is anticipated by the zoning code and allowed by the zoning code. We are requesting a waiver from the setbacks. Approximately half of the building is within the 40-foot height limit without the need for the additional setback. It's that smaller tower portion that I talked about. That's the primary subject of the waiver, with an overall height of 235 feet, 2 inches, and again, consistent with ALBA, as well as some existing development within the area. This height is generally consistent with recent developments such as the ALBA, as well as some that have been submitted to the city within recent months. This next one identifies our remaining waivers. I won't go through all of them, but I will put a point of emphasis on the access point separation requirement. We talked about dividing our access point into 2 one-ways. The city considers that as one, however, still requires that we provide 125 feet of separation between them. Our property is not even that wide. Therefore, we are requesting a waiver to provide for just over 61 feet of separation between the ingress and the egress. Those have been reviewed by your city traffic engineer as well as our traffic engineer, and found that there's no jeopardy to the safety along the roadway with regards to that proposal. In terms of traffic, the traffic study was submitted and reviewed by your staff. At most, it includes 12 trips during the PM peak hour. So within that 1 hour time frame, you will have a maximum of 12 trips. This is a reduction as a result of a reduction in the number of units. And it is consistent with the coastal residential exception area and does not create a significant impact on the transportation network. This was also confirmed by the city's own traffic study that was done for North Flagler Drive, which has shown that there is the capacity to handle these residential units and the additional traffic that goes along with them. The applicant remains committed to continuing to work with the adjacent Northwood Harbor Residential Neighborhood Association on various community improvements going forward. This includes when we bring a contractor on board, working with those residents on the logistical aspects of construction to address their concerns. We have met with them on numerous times in the past, and we will continue to engage with them in dialogue throughout the process. And we have met the requirements, the amendment standards, the waiver standards, as well as the site design and qualitative development standards outlined on your screen. And we ask for your approval this evening. So we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Are there any questions for the applicant? President Ward?
Thank you. This is for Brian. I know you mentioned and I know that it isn't part of this approval, the agreement with the neighborhood, but because it's been such a long road and a lot of meetings, I just wanted to clarify for the record. So you submitted a letter to the neighborhood agreeing to escrow $250,000 towards infrastructure projects that you're working on with engineering along Spruce Avenue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's the private agreement that you talked about.
That is the
which
private
probably
agreement.
wanted it to stay
That is-
private.
Yes, that is the private agreement. And I understand,
Okay.
I understand Commissioner Ward's point. It was something that was very important to her constituents. And yes, we did agree to that. It's not relevant in the sense of the approval, but it is important. And obviously, Related cares about that as well. So that's why we were able to do that.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I just wanted to go over the two waivers that you mentioned. One was eliminated and one was reduced. And so the one that was eliminated was the side setbacks?
Yes.
Okay, and then the one that was reduced was the setback off of Flagler from 25 to 40 feet?
No, it was the way there's a height to setback ratio. That's the waiver that was significantly reduced. As we increased the setback and we reduced the height, we needed less of a waiver for that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant before we hear from staff? President Ward?
Just feel the need to make a comment after that. I really appreciate that. I say it was a long road because obviously we've been meeting with them for a very long time. And the applicant has done a really good job about listening to the community, understanding what the needs are, reviewing the list that the community presented. They've been very organized in their outreach and making sure that they speak with one solid voice. And so I appreciate this neighborhood. And then I appreciate you all for coming to the table and saying, what can we do to be better neighbors? So it's been a long process, but that was the reason why I wanted to just make sure, because I know it's very important to the residents that are here tonight.
And thank you, Madam President, for your leadership in ensuring that those conversations happen and the outreach happened and that there was what appears to be a satisfactory resolution. So thank you for your leadership. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you. Brian, you mentioned about the zoning of the homes that are surrounding this project. Could you repeat that? I'm sure that it's change is difficult, and I'm sure especially with the neighbors that might be worrying about a tower next to their property, but I just wanted to confirm what you said was that their properties are also zoned for more density so that in the future, for example, if they wanted to sell or something, they could also be having more density on their properties?
Right. So, the zoning map gives some long-term vision for the city in addition to certain short-term elements. And so the MF32, I don't know when it happened, but long ago, the MF32, that 32 units, 32.32 or 23, something like that, units per acre, was put on all of the properties, basically, other than the public properties that are east of Flagler, north of about 40th Street, I think. And so those properties that are adjacent also have that MF32 designation and could be developed with up to 32 units per acre. If they have submerged lands, it's a slightly different way that it's calculated, but basically 32 units per acre.
Any other questions for the applicant before we turn to staff? Okay, staff, what say you?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, Kevy DeFrank, Senior Planner with the Development Services Department. Now I'll be presenting staff's findings and recommendation for the subject agenda item that includes ordinance number 5125-25 and resolution number 51-25 associated with the rezoning and waivers requests as the applicant's team has thoroughly presented to allow for the multifamily residential development project proposal known as Apogee, located at 4906 North Flagler Drive. And staff finds that the request complies with the rezoning standards, the site design qualitative development standards, and the residential plan development district provisions and requirements, all found in the city zoning and land development regulations. And on the 26th of January of this year, the planning board voted for approval with conditions of the subject rezoning and waivers requests. And therefore, staff is recommending approval of ordinance number 5125-25 and resolution number 51-25. And as you can see on the screen, a vote is not required for resolution number 51-25 at this time. That concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we turn to the cards? All right, we do have several cards, some who want to speak and some who do not, but we will go to the speakers first, since they're here. I'll read out 3 names. It's only 4 cards. I'm read out all 4 cards and start making your way towards your nearest podium. John Pulaski, Tatiana Mikolenko, Parisa Hamzetash, and Linda Gross. Mr. Pulaski?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone, Commissioner and Mayor. My name is Jonathan Pulaski. I live on 48th Street, a resident since 2015. I came before the Planning Board meeting many weeks ago with concerns regarding the ongoing and future development in my community, Northwood Harbor. In that meeting, I noted many concerns, the environmental impacts, community disruption, loss of residents due to the developments, influx of workers, construction and/or destruction of our neighborhood, and a negative impact and harm to our manatee population and our waterways. I was surprised by the chairman's response to my worries, as he did not mention any of the stated issues my community is experiencing. On the other hand, he said, West Palm is growing and we need more housing. Apogee, among others, is one of many super rich condos going up in my neighborhood. Essentially, they are snowbird homes that will only be occupied 1/4 of the year. The residents owners of these condos will not be supporting our community year-round. That's a big concern to all of us. Another project, Great Gulf, just gave the eviction notice to around 70 families and units, so essentially displacing current residents in the neighborhood to make room for the people on vacation. Another concern I had was that prior to the meeting, as you guys have stated this evening, the board states that they have not talked to developers, had no investigations, have no communication with them, no expert opinions, or even visited the site of the neighborhood. My thoughts, maybe they should take a field trip. This is a historic community with many homes 100 years old or nearing that, and I receive these public notices on the projects because I live within 500 feet from Apogee and Alba. Constant construction and/or destruction is damaging many of these homes, sidewalks, and the constant disruption is affecting our everyday lives already and will continue to get worse with this project. Getting to my point, an overlay plan should have been made prior to any of these projects going up, including Icon, Marina Village, and Alba. It is important that we respect this neighborhood and its residents first, then look into growth and progress. I appreciate the reduction ratios Mr. Seymour spoke of earlier. Our community has had association with them and many discussions with them about our concerns. Like this overlay states, I believe it has been submitted. These structures need to have a cap on them. I believe they have now met that cap. There should be community incentives and benefits with these condos, not offer only for its occupants, but to the neighbors across the street, especially since we suffer during the entire build of the project, not the gentlemen, most of the gentlemen over there tonight. Northwood Harbor Association has created an overlay request list that has been submitted, I believe, and I agree with these wishes. My last comment is the gentleman spoke first that they have already added value to our neighborhood since Icon. I would like to know how many residents.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your time is up. Tatiana Mikolenko.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tatiana Mikolenko. I've owned the property directly across the street from 4906 for almost 30 years. It's a single-family home with 2 cottages that's now going to be 240, 50 feet that I get to look directly at every day and deal with all the construction trying to get out of my driveway. And I just think that the city has sold out the residents that have been here for many, many years. The Apogee and related, thank you for working with us. We do appreciate that. But still, you're destroying the north end. And I know not only one of you even lived there, let alone visit us, but we are a neighborhood that have been there for 30 to 40, 50, 60 years, some of us. And you're letting them completely destroy our neighborhood, and that's not right. And our streets are falling apart, my sidewalks are sinking, everything just from what we've already had there, let alone what you have what's planned to come there. but this particular project is directly across the street from my front window, and this is not what I bought 30 years ago to look at. And I really appreciate if you would look at the overlay plan that Northwood Harbor has presented to you, or is being presented, because we live there. None of you live there, but Commissioner Ward, we live there. These are our homes that we've had for many, many years that are crumbling and falling apart from all this construction. And we are concerned. This is our livelihood, our quality of life that we've lived there. I thought I was going to retire there, but you can't retire with banging 7 days a week, 7 to 7. Oh, sometimes it's 4:30 in the morning when the cement trucks are up and down you're outside your window. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Parisa Hamzatash.
Good evening, Mayor James, Commissioners, audience. I'd like to speak about
State your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Parisa Hamzatash, and I live in the condominium at Placido Mar, just north of the proposed project. Mr. Roach and Gunster presented the initial plan to the current plan, the reduction in waivers, and it shows a commitment by this developer who is a fantastic, credible developer, incredible visionary. I don't take that away. But the key issue here is the height. The current height is 40 feet, and there have been approved by the planning board 235 feet. The setback, even though it's to the water, while it may consider the needs of the single-family homes, is actually the most detrimental to the 145 condominiums that are in Placido Mar. The value, and not even dollar value, because I focused on that a lot at the planning meeting, the value and the joy of the condo owners in Placido Mar is in the view. And it's solely for the view that while they're MF32 and can build the density is not an issue. There are plenty of 4-story or 2-story, 4-unit properties that can fit 32 on that size lot, less than 1.5 acre. The issue is the height, and the height creates the value. So if the project is going to go through and we want to enrich the lives of the neighboring communities as the mission of the related group, and that we're a city of opportunity for all, and I appreciate being on your housing task force a few years ago, then I would just ask that the benefit that is to be derived from this project, which had particular circumstances, which I'm not sure what they are, but I haven't read the entire staff report, but apparently there were particular circumstances that justified the variance. I'd like to understand what are the particular circumstances that justify the variance to allow this height, and what the benefits to be derived. If the benefit is the tax dollars that are going to be generated from the 39 luxury units, which I think is fantastic, that's the only benefit I can see, then I ask the commission to earmark the tax dollars for the next 30 years that come from that project to be for that area from 39th Street or 36th Street to 59th Street, to earmark, let's say it's $150 million valuation on this project right now, whatever the property tax would be, that earmark it, that those dollars go back into that community and not elsewhere throughout the city, because that would be one way that I could see the benefits derived would help that neighborhood. We only have view, we don't have amenities, so you can't sit and walk around and go to restaurants, so it's the view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda Gross.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioner, and the people that are attending today's meeting. My name is Linda Gross. I reside at 429 47th Street, which is a beautiful 100-year-old house that I love. We are a historic waterfront neighborhood in need of smart growth. The current design, ultra-modern design, is incongruent to the surrounding neighborhood and homes. I'd like to mention something that was brought up regarding traffic. Right now, that is one of the things I'm very much focused on with the ALBA project. We are in need of new traffic and safety measures, and that will continue with our pending growth. So The gentleman who spoke before on behalf of this project said that everything seems to be in check and being great, but it's not. We're getting a big increase in traffic. There's a big increase in problems. There's not enough people. There's not enough places for people to cross safely. There's nobody there after 3 o'clock. Cars go by the flagman, and it can be very dangerous. I would like to mention also that they have the garage is very overimposing. It's a big caveat. It kind of looks like a cruise ship that's coming out onto the street. I mean, I don't see anything aesthetically pleasing about that, and I think it's very problematic with the design of the building. You see a huge tube-like structure jutting out into the street, and I think they could do a better job of that. Another thing that I would like to suggest is the fact that that was a beautiful historical home is at 4906. The plans are to do a total demolition of it, and I think that that is a very bad idea, and it's very sad. There is a history to that house. It has a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous coral rock entryway that somehow could be preserved and somehow worked into this design if they would kindly relook and revisit that obtrusive garage design. It just doesn't work. I don't think that it works at all. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I mean, I know that we're going to have growth. I know that there's more coming, but a sensitivity to the fact that we are a historic neighborhood, that these towers cast giant shadows on the neighboring structures and people who have lived there their whole lives. A sensitivity to that would be very much appreciated. One other thing that's very important with the new buildings that I'd like to bring up and have a question answered regarding the glass. Are they using a glass that is what they call bird-proof? Because there is a problem with birds striking these very tall towers, and unfortunately they perish from that. So I think it's a very important design feature to have the bird safety glass. Thank you very much for allowing me to comment.
Thank you very much. All right, we will now turn, there are a number of cards where people wanted their comments read into the record, so we will proceed with that. This is, the first one is from Craig Glover, and he states, 626 7th Street is the address he lists. Dear West Palm Beach City Commission, I've witnessed the related group Miami's compassion and commitment to reach out to local residents in the North End communities, Pleasant City and Coleman Park neighborhoods. Related group has been willing to listen to residents, identify community priorities, and participate in a public-private residents partnership to find solutions. They are one of the few, if not only, developers that I'm aware of that has made such a deep commitment to connecting with and serving local residents in these underserved communities. For these reasons, I support the Related Group Miami's development of the Apogee Residences Project, located at 4906 North Flagler Drive in West Palm Beach. All right, another card from Terrence B. Rich, who's at 1429 6th Street. As a local business owner, I appreciate Related Group's strong relationship with small businesses in our community. Their commitment to West Palm Beach is evident, and I support the Apogee project. Claudia Kirk Bartow, Northwood Harbor Neighborhood Association appreciates Mr. Seymour at Gunster holding an escrow for Related the funds for the community center, and we are in support of the entirety of the plan for the north end of West Palm Beach. Elizabeth Prokosky, 508 50th Street. Northwood Harbor appreciates Related's give back to the community. We need a master plan / overlay so incentives are given back to the community for future projects. Shannon Underwood, 422 48th Street. I oppose this project as a member of the community of Northwood. Mary Murphy, 5200 North Flagler Drive. The city needs a master plan in place before it goes forward on any more development. And Elizabeth Nooney, 439 31st Street. I am in support of this project. I have lived in the neighborhood for several years and attended many meetings. I'm very impressed with all Related has done for the community and continues to do. Approving these projects will help promote a safer, more vibrant community. So those are all the cards. Commissioners, do you have any additional comments, questions? President Ward.
Two questions, one for staff. Kevy, I was wondering if you want to address the particular circumstances and the benefit derived comment?
Yes, so that is a provision for allowing planned developments less than 2 acres in size within the code, and as we are aware, this property is 1.45 acres in size, and this is a project that staff finds in compliance with the code and finds that this would be a benefit to the community. Thank you.
Okay.
Follow up?
No, that's fine. I mean, I was hoping for more detail, but I mean, I did have a question about the bird safety glass because I know that that's come up, so I wanted to address that as well to see what, is there?
You probably won't be surprised. We haven't picked the glass yet. There's no approval to pick, but I can see Andrew sitting over there. And John has taken notes, and I took the note, and we will go look at it. I don't know anything about bird safety glass. We'll talk to Fidel. As we go through the building permitting and design, we'll take that into account. But I have not even, we haven't gotten to glass at that detail.
Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. I am very sensitive to the fact that this abuts a historic neighborhood. While I don't live in the north end of the city, in the south end, and we have historic neighborhoods, I did just walk with my daughter through the yard sales that you all had recently in the surrounding neighborhoods. I'm very familiar with it. And one of the things that we hear across the city is about construction noise and construction parking. And I know somebody mentioned during the presentation that you all have a plan for that. Can you please elaborate on that a little bit more?
So the construction parking is all going to be off-site. They'll be shuttled in. There is going to be impacts from construction relative to noise that happens. There are construction
Will it be at
impacts
certain times of days? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes. No, you can interrupt. You're sitting there. I'm over here. But there's code requirements for when things can happen. But more importantly, as John talked about, is we will be in the process and continue through with the work with Northwood Harbor to let them know what's happening, to talk to them about their concerns, see what we can accommodate. There are obvious limits, particularly with the water on one side, on what you can and cannot do, but we're going to do everything we can. There's all kinds of requirements that Mr. Brown and the building department looks at and has to go through relative to things like vibration and impacts on neighboring properties and all of that goes through this process. And of course, during those discussions, if there's any concerns, we'll make sure they know who to talk to. We'll be working through the association. Obviously, can't go to every single homeowner to try to accommodate for that. It's an imperfect thing, right? The reality is there are impacts from construction. There are impacts from construction of single-family homes to condos, and they're different, but we do everything we can to try to minimize where it's possible.
Follow up?
Yes.
Thank you. And, it sounds like we heard from some residents and some speakers that you have been very accommodating and working with them, and I appreciate that. And I would hope that if this is approved tonight, that you'll continue working with them because there might be some unforeseen issues that arise and that we can mitigate them moving forward.
100%. As you know, Related is committed to this community. Mr. Perez, Senior, George, loves the city of West Palm Beach and wants to continue to do work and be a part of and have Related be a part of the city. The way to do that is to continue to have these discussions and continue to work with our neighbors, and we will do that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
Thank you. My question was also going to be about mitigating the construction. I know that we've talked about this on other projects. I live downtown. I'm surrounded by construction all the time, and I'm excited about it, but it is hard for people, especially in this day and age when people are working from home, and just whatever you can do to mitigate any issues with the noise and with loss of power or any of those kind of things that sort of come with construction, that would be appreciated. And then I also have a question, I guess, for someone else on your team, but I know I've seen Andrew and I've seen Bruce having many community meetings in Pleasant City and around the area talking about community benefits that they were hoping to hear from neighbors about some of the things they might like to see. I'm wondering if you can expand on any of the things that came out of those meetings that might be of interest to the
So
neighbors.
the biggest one was from Northwood Harbor, and it was Spruce Street. And so Commissioner Ward asked me about the private agreement. So what that private agreement talks about is the fact that we are going to super accelerate improvements to Spruce Street. We will pay $250,000 towards design, working with the city, with Northwood Harbor, towards the Spruce Street improvements. If we get the design done for under the $250,000, the rest of that money will be donated to the city for your cost, to offset your costs to make that happen. That was the biggest that came out of this, and that's the first thing that we're working towards.
Commissioner Peduzzi?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to thank the developer for responding and making some changes to this project to mitigate some of the impact. You know, change is difficult, and I think that we recognize that up here, that these are neighborhoods with people have established their lives and come to think of their neighborhood in a certain way, and these things do impact the way they feel about their neighborhood, and change is not easy. But I'll tell you, even though some of us, most of us here, do not live in that neighborhood, we understand that our own neighborhoods are going through change. I hear every day from constituents in the western communities about the traffic problems on North Lake and the construction on Beeline, and that it's really impacted life for everyone. We have significant change going on downtown. We have significant change going on in the south end. As property values rise, as people are attracted to this community, we're going to have changes. We're going to see changes occur. And it doesn't mean that you know, just because we don't live in your neighborhood that we don't care and we aren't, you know, sympathetic to those changes, but changes are coming. And I appreciate what you and your team has done to try to mitigate some of that impact. So thank you for that. And you know, hopefully also with the construction, we can take steps also to mitigate some of that impact on the surrounding neighborhood.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree so much with Commissioner Peduzzi's comments. And I'd like to say that I think that this developer has had tremendous experience in building buildings that are significantly taller than this one, and understanding the communities that are around the building. So I appreciate the intentionality and the outreach and ensuring that it's not that it's not the developer making a decision in a silo, and that they're actually using information and making the best decision that they can for the majority. That's been apparent through the outreach efforts and the collection of the data and how it's been utilized. So I do recognize that. And I have a question for staff. So you spoke a little bit about the zoning and the height. I'd like you to talk a little bit about spot zoning and where this falls into any of that. Is there, because you spoke about the surrounding areas and the zoning in those areas being modified as well.
So currently within this corridor, a majority of the properties are zoned MF32. And with this proposal to rezone to a residential plan development, it's pretty much consistent with what's already been allowed or what's already been approved within this area. As you can see with the Alba, if you can follow my cursor here. So this wouldn't be considered a spot zoning type of request. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Because it is in line with the plan and the direction of the community.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. LaFrance.
President Ward?
I just have one final comment for the residents. Again, I feel like I didn't respond directly to you all, but I feel like we've had so many meetings that I know I've had multiple conversations, and I just want to say thank you again for just continuing to meet. It's not over. We're still working, and I know everybody's not necessarily happy with change, and Commissioner Peduzzi, you said it perfectly. But we are working towards a goal of making the North End amazing for everybody. And, you know, a lot of the dollars should be going back and making sure our streets are beautiful and the walkability is there, and we have a quality of life, akin to any great city that we want to idolize. And so I appreciate you all, and I know it's not over, and continue to hold us accountable. I would love to see the Flagler overlay adopted by this body before any other project comes before us. You guys have been working hard at that. You answered what I asked. It was create a list, create conforming, you know, issues, and making sure that you have a concise message. And you all did that, and you've met with staff multiple times in the development community. I can't even tell you how many times at this point. So I appreciate you all, and I really do hope that we can get that done for you all, so that there is predictability within this, and that those funds can go back to other projects within the district.
Any other questions? Comments on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of ordinance number 5125-25, a rezoning to change the zoning designation of approximately 1.45 acres located at 4906 North Flagler Drive from multifamily high-density residential to residential plan development. This motion is based upon the application submitted, the staff report, factual testimony, the recommendation of the planning board, and the findings that the request complies with the comprehensive plan and the standards in section 94-32 of the city's zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 5125-25, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, amending the zoning map of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, by rezoning one parcel located at 4906 North Flagler Drive, approximately 1.45 acres, from multifamily high-density residential MF32 to residential plan development RPD, to create the apogee residential plan development, providing for the establishment of development regulations by separate resolution, declaring this zoning map amendment to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, revising the zoning map of the city accordingly, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 10.2, public hearing of resolution number 59-25, a request by Joseph Verdone of Carlton Fields on behalf of Wire F2 WPB Self-Storage LLC for a replat and minor subdivision of the property consisting of approximately 1.46 acres located at 1501 and 1515 North Dixie Highway and 424 L.A. Kirksey Street, or 15th Street. Mr. Verdone.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. My name is Joe Verdone, and I'm with the law firm of Carlton Fields. I'm here tonight to follow up on a final plat approval and authorization for the Kirksey Commons PD that was approved by this body about a year ago. It is a property that's up on Kirksey Commons and Dixie Highway. Kirksey to the north, 14th Street to the south, west of Dixie Highway. It is being combined into, there was 4 parcels, it was being combined into 1 parcel, and it also reflects the alley abandonment that we received from this board as well. It meets the standards for the subdivision as well as the plats. The project hasn't changed. As you can see, this is the existing ground floor that was approved and the second floor. But basically nothing's changing. This is basically finishing the project. The building permit's ready to be issued subject to this plat and the issuance of a PCN number. And we look for your support.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for the applicant before we hear from staff? Okay, staff, what say ye?
Hello again. For the record, Kevin DeFrank, Senior Planner with the Development Services Department. And for the subject item, agenda item, that includes resolution number 59-25, which includes a replat of the subject property including 4 parcels located on the west side of North Dixie Highway between LA Kirksey Street and 14th Street. Staff finds the request complies with the subdivision review requirements and subdivision general design standards found in the city zoning and land development regulations. And staff recommends an approval of resolution number 59-25.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? President Ward?
I actually had a question for Mr. Verdone, and I apologize.
It's okay. He's still here.
Thank you for bringing this back. I'm excited for this to move forward. I just was wondering about your timeline after the fact. I know you're not the actual applicant, but do you know, just so I can let the Pleasant City community know?
Pardon me?
I would like to let the Pleasant City community know that's next to it, kind of like a timeline.
It's moving forward. The building permit's ready. I can't tell you what the construction schedule is, but the
Okay.
building permit's ready, and these are the last things that we're trying to do to get that's done. The last thing that I need is this plat approval and a new PCN number for the project as a single property. That will enable the county to give me the impact fee credits necessary to move the project forward and close it out.
Great, thank you.
So we plan on moving forward, though.
Mr. Verdone, could you check with your client and commit to getting the construction schedule, if it's available, to the commissioners as soon as possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
May I add, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
So if I'm not mistaking, the building permit for this project has been issued, so that is moving forward. And this is one of the requirements that must be executed prior to obtaining a CO for the project.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move approval of resolution number 59-25, creating the plat entitled Wire F2 WPB Self-Storage LLC. This motion is based upon the application submitted, the staff report, factual testimony, and the findings that the request complies with all applicable provisions of Chapter 177 Florida statutes, the comprehensive plan, and the standards in Section 94-342 of the city zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay, we will now turn to comments from the public. Are there any cards?
No, Mr. Mayor.
You don't have any?
Nope.
Okay. We'll go now to comments from the dais, and we'll begin with you, President Ward.
Thank you. I hope everybody had a fun St. Patty's Day. I was working, but I saw that a lot of people were enjoying themselves on Clematis Street all day long. And as I rode my bike by, they had like a full band, a bagpipe band going on. So it seemed very lively all throughout the day. And it's very exciting that we have that in the city. I just wanted to follow up on the comment last time, Curry Park community engagement. The CRA is asking for community input to help shape the cafe's design and function and programming of events in the park. This is not related to the actual design of the park, but the programming once the park is complete. There are 3 other meetings set, March 31st at La Marina, Rybovich Marina, Safe Harbor Marina, from 6 to 8, and then April 17th at Manatee Lagoon from 6 to 8, and then May 29th from Flagler Gallery from 6 to 8. And I want to thank Congresswoman Sherfilis McCormick for donating such an enormous amount of money to us. It's really appreciated. And I know that she's also hosting an informational town hall meeting regarding the current threats facing Social Security and how to address it on the 18th at Gaines Park at 6. And a Teacher Appreciation Week. So with the support of the mayor, the West Palm Beach Education Advisory Committee is spearheading for the second year their Teacher Appreciation Week initiative, which aims to celebrate teachers in our community for Teacher Appreciation Week, May 5th to the 9th, by having local West Palm Beach businesses partner with the city to provide discounted services and goods. We got fancy this year. We have our own QR code, but we've been sharing it with a lot of business owners. If you know a business owner, if you are a business owner and you want to participate, it's 1 week and you can create the incentive yourself. And the CRA and the city did a great job last year of highlighting the businesses that participate. So you get a little free advertising as well while you support our fantastic teachers. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. Every March is Women's History Month, starting March 1st through 31st. I'm sure that this will continue by presidential proclamation. It is an annual observance to highlight the contributions of women to events in history and contemporary society. Here are a few names of women from West Palm Beach who made history. Dr. Alice R. Evans Miller, Millie Gildersleeve, Barbara Joan Prillette, Nellie O'Hara, Bessie Fenn, Ruby Edna Pierce, Lily Pierce Voss, Agnes Ballard, Marjorie Merriweather Post, Petra Penn, Cora Studstill Perry, Josie Perry, Lois Frankel, Nancy Graham, Harriet Himmel, Jerry Moyo, Carol Roberts, Ruby Bullard, Virginia Baker, Priscilla Taylor, Maud Ford Lee, Addie Green, Dr. Deborah Robinson, the Honorable Cherie Cunningham, Sarah Baker Barnes, Alexia Cox, Eva Mack, and so many other women that have contributed so much to the city of West Palm Beach. I'd just like to acknowledge them. And the list could go on and on and on. It includes our city administrator, our city attorneys and city clerks, so many of our staff members, people in the West Palm Beach team. Thank you, ladies, for all that you have done and continue to do. Dr. James Green from Palm Beach County presented an economic mobility study in December of 2024. It was an amazing study. It was probably one of the most amazing summits that I've ever attended. And it really focused on the cycle of poverty. And during that day-long workshop, I heard from Rafael Clemente, and I'd like to acknowledge you, Mayor, for bringing Rafael to speak to the city and to say some things that, it's not always easy to talk about. And sometimes when we look back at things, we're proud of certain things and we're not as proud as others. And some folks just want to forget that things have ever occurred. But in order to see progress, in order to gauge that, in order to see things change, you have to acknowledge everything that has led to the position that you're in while you continue to address your way forward. Dr. Green has, I'm going to share a flyer. He's continuing to work, and the newest project that he's working on is Faith in Action Palm Beach County Residents Building Hope. And it is inviting faith-based organizations to transform property into hope. There is another seminar that will be taking place on April the 4th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Boynton Beach Police Department. And this is from the Palm Beach County Community Services. And you are welcome to go to the Palm Beach County website and utilize the QR code in order to register to be a part of our history today and the hope for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, we are working on our downtown master plan and revising the city's zoning code, and there will be 3 roundtable panels coming up over the next few months to discuss this and hear from residents and stakeholders. So the first one will be this Thursday, March 20th at 9:30, and it will be held at the Mandel Public Library. So I just encourage anyone who has interest in talking about the downtown master plan and any changes that they would like to see to mark that on your calendars, including all of you guys. The West Palm Beach PD will be holding a Perseverance Slam this Wednesday, March 19th from 6 to 9 p.m. At 1201 7th Street. It sounds like a lot of fun, music, basketball, free food. It starts at 6 p.m. and anyone who has interest in attending can find more info on the West Palm Beach website. This is a really exciting opportunity for high school students with interest in engineering and urban technology. The Center for Smart Streetscapes is offering a paid internship. They have been working in partnership with the city on many different projects, and this program will be 6 weeks, will be held at the Mandel. It starts on June 30th, and the deadline to apply is on April 6th. It's a fantastic opportunity to work with top scholars from Columbia University and also to get paid while doing so. So anyone who is interested in applying can check out, let's see, it's My Streetscape Summer Research Institute, or contact our office. I think it's also on the city website, but be happy to share more info. And just a reminder that the boat show is here. I'm really excited about that. I think we all are, but every year I get at least a few calls afterwards talking about the parking rates. And so I just want to go on record for anyone that might be coming to downtown West Palm from another part of the city or state to check out the boat show website. Has the list of all the kind of parking prices. Many of the parking garages and the parking lots around here are not city operated, and they are charging outrageous prices for parking. So it might be cheaper just to Uber if you're coming this way, but just encourage people to check it out ahead of time so they know what to expect. And otherwise, I think there's still time to celebrate St. Patrick's Day as soon as we get out of here. Hopefully I'll see you all at O'Shea's. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Peduzzi.
Thank you, Mayor, and to my colleagues and to our residents who are NCNC members. NCNC is having its annual meeting breakfast Thursday, April 10th at the Club at Ibis at 7:30 in the morning. And they have asked me to ask you to RSVP as soon as possible. Hopefully, we will see everyone there. The NCNC is the Northern Community Neighborhood Consortium, comprised of member communities in West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Gardens. I believe we have 3 or 4 member communities in West Palm. Ibis, Iron Horse, and Bay Winds are among them. So get your RSVP in, and want to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day, and looking forward to seeing everyone at the boat show that runs from Wednesday to